I think the culture of celebrity and entertainment in general is one that encourages and cultivates a tremendous amount of selfishness. I think it's tough to keep your head on straight, especially when you're at the buffet and you're allowed to take whatever you want. But it's an important part of surviving it, for sure.
So, what, he wants to take over the town? Like Hiram Lodge? We stopped Hiram, we can stop Percival.
I don't think Percival wants to take over Riverdale. Something tells me he wants to destroy it.
Riverdale is still a fan favorite show.
Yeah.
After 6 seasons, I know you all have been renewed for season 7.
Yes, we have.
But there's some speculation that the show is going to come to an end after that. So what do you say to fans who are wondering?
I mean, I don't really know. I'm the actor on it, so I have no idea what happens afterwards. I know that 7 years, not to get too technical about it, but 7 years is a pretty standard contract for most actors. So generally it's safest to just assume it'll run for 7 years, but we're lucky enough to have run for 7. I mean, I think a 22 episode, hour-long show running for 7 seasons is something we might not see too much of in the future. With the streaming models and how we're building most shows and the length of most seasons, I don't think this kind of structure for a television show is going to exist too much longer. So it's a privilege to say that we're on one of those before maybe the model changes.
Yeah. Speaking of that, there are some people who are still catching up thanks to streaming and all of that, still catching up with Riverdale. How would you explain the multiverse to them? Because it can be a bit complicated for some.
It can be. I think we stuck true to our comic lineage, and because Archie Comics has always had a very open universe, the Predator has come to visit, and we've had a bunch of different little guest stars within the actual Digest comics, that we had the potential to maneuver that way. And narratively, we decided to go along with the multiverse idea. I really love it. Honestly, I think it was the 100th episode, or maybe I forget the exact one it was, when the Jughead paradox is truly one of my favorite episodes in the series. I think it's a love letter to the fans, a love letter to the old Archie Digest, and I think it was really well done.
Well, looking back over all of the seasons, what is the number one piece of advice you would give to yourself when you first started doing the show? Looking back now.
I think emotional stamina, for sure.
Well, that's big. Explain.
Is a big one. Well, I think, depending on the kind of job that you're doing, to a greater or lesser extent as an actor, you're sort of dipping into an emotional well. And if you're doing that for 9 months straight, for 22 episodes, you have to find an effective way to refill that well throughout those 9 months in order to have something to pull off of. That, and I think because we were in Vancouver, I'm just getting real with you, but because we were in Vancouver, we oftentimes didn't experience the fruits of our labor within a city that really cherishes film and television, like something like Los Angeles as an example. So it kind of felt like when I would come to Los Angeles, I'd be like, whoa, and I'd like go crazy. I would say, if I were to talk to myself 6 years ago, I'd be like, hey man, it's gonna be quite big. Keep your head on straight.
One more question, I have to wrap with you.
Please.
But you talked about refueling yourself emotionally, and recently you also opened up about the effects that fame can have on children and your Disney Channel co-stars. How are you balancing fame in your everyday life? How are you refueling yourself?
I think that was the New York Times article, and I think specifically, while the conversation was around child stars in that moment, I think fame has that effect regardless of age. I think it really does, and I think the culture of celebrity and entertainment in general is one that encourages and cultivates a tremendous amount of selfishness. And I think it's important to remind yourself that the lifestyle you want to live and using your job to work towards that lifestyle is a much more effective means at a long-term career than working for your job or basing your job around a potential accolade and an ego that you could acquire through like the praise and selfishness that the industry sort of encourages. I think it's tough to keep your head on straight, especially when you're at the buffet and you're allowed to take whatever you want. but it's an important part of surviving it for sure.
So wise.
Wow, thank
You are. You taught me something today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.